let me take a look at our review for today. Sorry for question number 7. I'm going to start at g of negative 9. That's where I'm going to start. So I'm using the g function, and I'm going to say that the value of the variable is negative 9. So looking at g of negative 9, that is basically negative 9 all squared minus 1. Negative 9 all squared, that's 81 minus 1. So that gives me 80. So all this became 80. Now, this h on the outside, I'm going to do h of 80. So looking at the function h, the value of the variable is 80. So I'm really looking at 80 minus 2, better known as 78. I'll take a look at question number 8. I'm going to do the inverse of this function. First of all, this f of x could be like f of x, g of x, whatever value that I give you guys, change that to a y. So I'm going to call this y equals 2 minus 6 over 5x. Now, y and the variable, it could be x, it could be n, it could be anything. Y and the variable are going to switch places. So y and x in this case are going to switch places. So I have that x equals 2 minus 6 over 5 and y. Now let's get the y by itself. I see this 2 here. Let me subtract it. So I have that x minus 2 is equal to negative 6 over 5y. I see a fraction. Let me multiply everything by 5 to get rid of fractions. I'm going to multiply everything by 5. That gives me 5x minus 10 equals negative 6y. Now, to get the y by itself, let me divide everything by negative 6. So I know that's how that's going to cancel out. My numbers, if I can divide these numbers by negative 6, obviously do divide them by negative 6. If we cannot divide them by negative 6, I'm just going to write it as a fraction. So I have that 5x minus 10 over negative 6 is equal to y, and that's going to be our inverse. Looking at question number 9, make sure you see your root and your exponent. On square roots, the root is 2, so I'm going to write my 2. All of this, it's to the 1 power, so I'm going to write this in exponential form. So let me write 10x inside parentheses to begin with, and I'm going to write this to the 1/2. When I type this, make sure you have 10x inside parentheses to the 1/2. Make sure that 1/2 is also inside parentheses. Now for question number 10, I'm going to do the opposite. I give it to you in exponential form, and I want it in radical. So my radical form, inside the radical, I'm going to have a 2a. Now my root in this case is the 4th root, and all of this is to the 3rd power. The way I'm going to type this, I'm going to write rad forward of 2a, but all of this to the 3rd. Do keep in mind though, it's going to look like I have 2 sets of parentheses that I'm closing at the same time. Now let's take a look at number 11. Solve each equation. Remember to check for external solutions. So this case, make sure the square root is by itself. I'm going to divide both sides by 8 to get rid of that 8 outside of the square root. So I have that 8 is equal to the square root of x minus 1. Now that the square root is by itself, I'm going to get rid of it by squaring both sides. So I get that 64 is equal to x minus 1. Now to finish this, my minus 1, I'm going to move it to the left as a plus 1. And I get that 65 is equal to x. If I was to plug it into the original question, 64 is equal to 8 times the square root of 65 minus 1. 64 is equal to 8 to the square root of 64. 64 is equal to 8 times 8. Yeah, it works. Now looking at question number 12. I want to have m by itself. So everything that is not part of m, I'm going to get rid of it. My minus 5, let me move it as a plus 5. So I have that m to the 3 halves is equal to 729. The way I'm going to undo a fraction as an exponent, I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal, 2/3. Now I have that m is equal to 729 to the 2/3. Now this thing, there's two ways of doing it. Find out what's the cube root of 729, and whatever you get, square it. Or literally type it in the calculator, go 729 to the 2/3. Make sure you're using parentheses for the 2/3. So I have 729 to the 2/3. Once again, make sure you use parentheses. And that gives me that m, it's equal to 81. The quiz tomorrow. Let's see how many questions. There's a total of 20. We're going to have 2 of these. We're going to have 4 of these. 2 of these. 2 of these. 4 of these. And 6 of these.